Hello, welcome back. Today we are talking about what happens when the plan changes. How easily can you adapt to it? This is the Sales Ops Effect, where we strengthen our skills as strategic leaders to grow businesses with integrity. How did January go? How was it? We're at the end of January now. The plan that we were supposed to do for this year, how much has it changed already? Because of unsuspecting things that have come out of the woodwork. Things change a lot, and particularly inside of small and medium-sized businesses that are scaling up, things can change all the time. And whilst it's great for us to plan and have really firm things that we need to do, we do also have to remain flexible and be able to pivot and adapt. So how do we hold the two things in our mind at the same time? The way I like to think about it is, if you know what the end goal is, in fact, the end benefit, not just the deliverable of whatever that particular project is, but the benefit of that thing being delivered is. If you know what the end deliverable is, if that's the part that remains intact, how we get there, the route to getting there, it's okay for that to change. It's like if you're driving and if you're trying to get to Edinburgh and you were driving, or you were taking a train or whatever, and you had to, something happened, there was a storm and you have to go by a different route. You're still going where you need to go, but you're just going to have to get there another way, although it's really annoying and it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive and take you more time. That's the bit that we just need to understand and accept, even though it's really irritating. And it's like, how can there be so many changes in an organization? How did other people who made these decisions not think these things through? In truth, this happens a lot. It happens a lot. There are things, some people don't think things through, for a start. It's something that I have to remind myself of frequently. And it's not like we're asking for people to be psychic and think of every single possible scenario. But sometimes people make a decision simply because they know one needs to be made. And so they just pick one. Some people are making those decisions when they're already decision fatigued. So they're not even paying attention to the real outcomes. They're not really looking at it with an informed mindset. And sometimes there are situations that happen outside of our control. That means that decisions that we made, we do have to change. So then how do you adapt? Again, it's knowing what the benefit is, and then changing what you're going to do to get there, finding your different route. If you're on the train and you have to get a different train, you look up how to get a different train. You go back to the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 impact framework. If you don't have it, do join our next webinar, because you'll probably get a copy there. Definitely everybody who's in the community has their copy of the impact framework that I go through. And adapt as needed is one of the 9 areas on the framework. We keep our flexibility by planning for it in advance. And that means if you have your high level plan of these are the steps that we need to do in order to get to this desired result, this deliverable that will lead to this desired result, what you want to do is, if anybody's familiar with the project management terminology, it's called creating a critical path. So it's looking at all of your milestones or all of your tasks that you need to do, and then finding what the critical path of tasks are to get to the end result. And by that, I mean the things that you absolutely have to do, and you can't do one before the other. They have to go in that order, and all of these things have to happen in order for us to get to where we're going. And if you know what that is in your plan, then it means that the other items are the flexible stuff. So, when you're trying to figure out anything, the first thing you have to do is get clarity. And you go back to your plan to get that clarity. What's the things that I originally said that I had to do, the critical path? Is that critical path still intact? Does that remain the same as a result of these changes? If it does, great. Then that way you can just look at the other things that are flexible, and some things are just you're moving them around by time. We're looking at, again, time, cost, quality. So you might have to change the timeline of when you're doing other things that can be moved. You might need to go back and say, okay, so you've made this decision. It's going to cost us. Is it going to cost us time, or is it going to cost us money? And then you have to look again at the quality of what you can be delivering on the other things that are flexible. Will this decision allow you to do things to the same quality that you were before? Will it even let you increase the quality, because that's a possibility? Or will it likely mean that this really big thing that you were trying to create, it's now just going to be the necessity, the things that are the most needed to get something done? And that's how you become flexible. It's you plan for it in advance. And I know that sounds really annoying, because it's just like, things have just been changed now. How am I supposed to go back in time? You can't. But you can sort stuff out for the future. If you haven't already planned to that degree beforehand, you can still take a look at the other items that were on your list. Again, time, cost, quality. If this project has changed, no one is ever working on one thing and just one thing. So if this project has changed, then some of these other projects might have to change in order to account for the fact that this project has changed. And you have to be honest with yourself, and then honest with the people who are signing off on these projects, people who are sponsoring them, your head of sales, your CEO. Okay, so you said that we have to do things differently as a result of these changes. Great. So I've looked at all of my projects, and this is the one that's going to have to take the hit in order to allow for me to deliver on these other things. And you do have to truly figure that out. And then you do have to communicate it. It's not something that you can just figure out and go, well, this is obvious. They've made this big old change, so it's obvious that I can't get all of these 10 things done. I can now only get 4 of them done as a result of this change. Like, for example, if there are a lot of redundancies, so the people that would be helping you with certain things aren't going to be around anymore, so you're going to be taking on a lot more work. No, you cannot still do all of the things that you were doing before. And whilst that might seem obvious, you do have to communicate it calmly and clearly, and still aligning everything towards the goal rather than talking about you as the individual, because it just comes across better. But it does need to be communicated. I think a lot of times people, when they do try to assess, okay, so what do I need to do? They just keep it to themselves and carry on chugging away. But if changes have occurred, then expectations will need to be addressed. That is one of the ways that communicating change has to happen at all levels, at all times, in a timely manner, rather. Because you can't just keep it to yourself. If something is affecting your workload, the time, the cost, the quality, then it needs to be communicated so that people know what the results are of them making that change, making those decisions. Do you know what I mean? Because like I said at the beginning, if people are making decisions and they're not really thinking about it, or they did think about it, but they just weren't aware of these other things, or something else has come in, they don't know everything that you know about your project, and you don't know everything that they know. And that's why you have to communicate. You don't overload each other, whoever it is that you're collaborating with, but you do have to actively say the words, well, that means this, then from my side, calmly and politely, just factually, because it's going to really, you stop a lot of arguments that way, because otherwise you're going to end up just doing your stuff, thinking everything is fine. And then 3 months down the line, somebody's going to go, hey, how come this thing hasn't been done? And you're like, well, obviously I couldn't do it. I was working on this other stuff. No, you committed to this piece of work. Now you've got a problem. So to close up, even though this feels a little bit rambly, but I hope you get what I mean. You can be flexible and adapt as needed if you plan well enough for it in advance. Presume that things are going to change. And I don't mean presume that things are going to change, so therefore your plans don't need to exist or just loosey-goosey. It's worth still planning to a certain degree, knowing and accepting that things are going to change. Within project management discipline, we have risk plans at the beginning of projects and change logs. And the risk plan is you basically go through and say, what are all the risks to this project? And you write them all down, and then you write down, so how would we solve for it? I'm not even asking for you to go in that deep, but depending on the size of the project, you might want to, even if it's just like top 5 things. Because when the fire does break out in whatever way, shape or form, that will help. And a lot of what I'm trying to share is about keeping you afloat, so that you can do the whole marathon rather than doing lots and lots of sprints. Because even though sprints really help and they can get a lot of stuff done, if you carry on running at that speed forever, you just burn out. And that's not helpful to you. I do hope this episode was helpful to you though. Please do let me know and we'll speak soon.